Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. And also I'd like to say His Divine Grace Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. This is his picture right here. Everyone, you can see. Go Premananda Hari Hari Go. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Gauranga. Om Gyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksorim Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. This is Bhakti Vinod Thakur's appearance day, and this is a prayer that is his pranam prayer. I don't have it memorized. Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namane Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupa Nuga Varayate. Bhakti Vinod Thakur is the father, the biological father of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and he would be our great grandfather, and for the second generation, he's your great grandfather, spiritual master. There's a genealogical line that's biological, and then there's one that's spiritual. And in the spiritual line, he is the great-great-grandfather of most of the devotees in ISKCON today. And it is because of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there is a Hare Krishna movement. Lord Chaitanya, of course, inaugurated this. He's the Yuga Avatar. He inaugurated this process of chanting Hare Krishna, congregational. But it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. After a certain period of time, just like anything in the material world, of course, the Hare Krishna mantra and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are not material, but things in the material world have a tendency to deteriorate, or to, just like Krishna told Arjuna, you were there millions of years ago when I instructed the sun god. This very same science. I can remember, but you cannot. And over time, it's been covered over. So I've come again to teach it. Similarly, in Lord Chaitanya, he inaugurated this process of chanting, the process for this age of Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, when our lives are very short, our memories aren't so very keen, very clean, we have dirty habits, we are very unlucky, and this is a very difficult age for spiritual progress. So the Lord gave us a process that it's simple, but it's not easy, because it requires controlling the mind. And that's like trying to control, as Arjuna says himself in the second chapter, I think it is. It's like trying to control my mind. It's like trying to control the whirling wind, the hurricane winds. Like these winds that just hit Louisiana and Texas. Just so much damage. And we've all had experience with the power of it. So the mind, it's like, even if you are concentrating, sitting down, focusing on Hare Krishna mantra, from out of nowhere, thoughts will come from the past. Why? And actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur used to pray to his mind, please, let me be my friend. Please, O Mana, please be my friend. Help me to think of Krishna. And there is actually one quick pastime I might like to mention that with Bhaktivinoda Thakur that I read in the book by those three books that Bhakti Prakash wrote, mainly about Bhaktisiddhanta, of course, but there's a pastime where Bhaktivinoda was traveling with his son and someone else, I believe, and they came to a village at night, and so they didn't want to disturb anyone, so they stayed in an abandoned temple. And in the morning, and there was a lot of ruckus in this place. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur chanted very loudly, and things calmed down there. So in the morning, they went into the village, and the villager said, where have you come from? What? We're sorry we weren't here to greet you. This is the way it was in those days. The Prabhupada says that, if there was a time in India, you didn't need hotels, you had temples. You could go to any temple, and you'd have a place to stay, and you would have food to eat, like in Jagannath Puri, 56 times a day they're offering prasadam. And actually, a lot of the devotees, even now, you can go almost anywhere in the world, and you'll be welcomed at a Hare Krishna temple. We don't have to worry about hotels as much as the materialists, because Prabhupada set up this incredible transcendental society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. But this was Bhaktivinoda's inspiration. And so anyway, the pastime was, you can tell I'm not prepared, so I'm just all over the place. Anyway, they inquired, Bhaktivinoda, where did you stay? Or actually, he was known by Kedarnath Datta. And where did you stay last night? Well, we stayed in the rooms of that temple at the end of the village. They go, oh no, it's a very dangerous place. There's some entity there, a ghost, and the bricks are flying all night. You can't have a peaceful night. We're so sorry. We didn't know you stayed there. And he said, and I'm not remember exactly how the story went, but this is the essence of it. So Bhaktivinoda said, yes. There's a Brahma Rakshasa there. And a Brahmin that lived in that temple, and he managed that temple. And he committed the offense of inattentive while chanting. I believe that's what it was. It was one of the 10 offenses. He was inattentive while chanting. And now he's stuck there as a ghost. That was his reaction, committing this offense. And he said the only way you can rid him and rid him of that place and liberate him so he can move on with his spiritual life is if a really pure Vaishnava Brahmin chants the holy names very loudly. He'll be liberated. And so they took that to heart. And then they noticed, after he left, that there was never any more problems there from that ghost. That he was, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was that type of Vaishnava Brahmin, pure Vaishnava Brahmin. And he had chanted that night and liberated this ghost. So, I say that he's basically the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, because Prabhupada said it actually also, and he's the one who predicted that in the future there will be, someone will come and spread the holy name all over the world. And we know that was Prabhupada. And he said there'll come a time when there'll be the English, the French, the Germans, and the Russians, and they'll all be chanting the holy names together. And then there will be a time when all the fair-skinned Vaishnavas will come to Mayapur and chant with the Bengali Vaishnavas. They'll chant, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana. All of these things have come to pass. Bhaktivinoda predicted this. But at the time, Bhaktivinoda to get into his whole life, and he had a difficult childhood, and how he studied all the Western philosophies. He studied all the religious teachings of the Muslim, of Muhammad and of the Bible. He became expert in these different religions and all the philosophies. And then finally he comes to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now he's found, he was a Nitya Siddha. This is part of his Leela. And then he finds this is the true religion. But now he needs to find the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he couldn't even find it in Bengal at that time. Things had deteriorated so much, my original point, that was, even then, just a few hundred years after Lord Chaitanya, there was some second and third generation Vaishnavas who were very powerful. Narottam Das Thakur, Shamananda, not Srinivas, but some, I can't think of all the others right now. Maybe anyone else think of something? Srinivasacharya, yeah, that's what I thought. So, yeah, they went on the first traveling Sankirtan party. I think it was, Shamananda who had been Dukhi Krishna. That was his guru?
No, that was his previous name.
That was his previous name, yes. And his guru was Hridoy Chaitanya. And his previous name was Dukhi Krishna. And then Shamananda and Srinivas and, was it Narottam? The third one? They went on a traveling Sankirtan party. But everything was handwritten then. And they were working with Jiva Goswami. He was their Shiksha Guru. And that's another long story, but they brought the transcendental literatures over to Bengal, because Bengal had started to also become influenced by Sahaja philosophies. And we have to be on guard against these things, because it's already started to happen again in certain places, I don't want to get into it, but there are places where the Sahaja philosophy is already creeping in. And we have to be on guard about that. But Bhakti Vinod, at his time, there wasn't even a Chaitanya Charitamrita around. It took him months or years to find a version of it. He was looking for it. And he defeated all of these bogus, there was I think at least 11 or 12 of these Uppa Sampradayas, and he defeated all of them. He was he was like a lion singer. Also his son was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and he was also like a lion. The Mayavadis and the other bogus Vaishnavas, when they'd see him coming, they'd walk on the other side of the road. They were afraid of him. Anyway, so Bhakti Vinod, though, Prabhupada, I just heard a lecture about him this morning that Prabhupada gave in 1969 in London. And his main emphasis is that Bhakti Vinod was a grahasta. And it's possible for a grahasta to be a guru. And then Prabhupada told a story about Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy. That how can Ramananda Roy is Lord Chaitanya is asking him, Ramananda Roy is a governor, is a grahasta, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking him all these different questions, and Ramananda Roy says, how can you're putting me in the position of the teacher, I can't teach you, I'm a grahasta. And Lord Chaitanya said, no, keep a sutra. It doesn't matter whether you're a Brahmin or a Sudra. If you know the science or the knowledge, the science of Krishna, this transcendental science, anyone can become guru. Even women can become gurus. And actually it's been approved in ISKCON. But right now there isn't any. Grahastas can be gurus. We have grahastas here that are qualified. Pitushava, Yogendra, Tejas. These devotees, Donna Kelly, she's qualified to be a guru. There's no reason why these people can't become gurus. And if civilization starts to crumble, you'll have to have local gurus. It's better to have local gurus that you see, you know. So in Bhaktivinoda time, though, he defeated and reestablished the bona fide teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there are many versions of certain stories, but his schedule is what is really. I've also seen several versions of of that. And Prabhupada said that he would come home from work as a magistrate in Jagannath Puri around 5 o'clock, and then he'd take prasadam, and then do a little reading, and by 7 o'clock he would go to sleep, and he'd get up 5 hours later. But later on, some research has come out, and there are in different books in Bhakti-Vikashas, he says that between 8 and 10 p.m. he took rest. He would write between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. 4 a.m. to 4:30, rest. 4:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. he'd chant japa. 7 to 7:30, correspondences. 7:30 to 9:30, he'd study Shastra. 9:30 to 10 a.m., bathe, prasadam, half-liter milk, fruit, and 2 chapatis. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., he'd do his court duties. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., refresh at home. 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., court duties. 5 p.m. to 7, translate Sanskrit Shastras to Bengali. 7 to 8, bathe, prasadam, half-liter, milk, rice, 2 chapatis. He'd sleep 3 hours. In this case, he's sleeping 2 hours. In other places, they say he slept 3 hours. He would write for 8.5 hours. He'd do japa and study for 4.5 hours, and he'd work for 6 hours. The British were so attached to his work ethic. They so much wanted him. They even built a separate train station and a rail line to where when he had moved to Krishnagar. But the very famous pastime that we all know is the one when he was in Jagannath Puri. There was and he had a lot of dealings with, at that time, just like we, not as much now as we did back in the 60s and the 70s, there would be all these bogus gurus who were claiming to be God, and they could give you a mantra, then you could become God. And I don't remember specifically, we would always be, you don't hear it as much now, at least I haven't heard it, but Prabhupada would often say that we should preach strongly that if someone is preaching bogus religion, or misusing the teachings of Jesus Christ, or misusing the Bhagavad Gita, that should be criminal. That is like if I was a doctor and I say I have a cure for COVID-19. You drink some bleach and you can be cured, or inject yourself. That's bogus. That's poison. Anyway, so Prabhupada said, if someone is teaching, saying, you pay me $100, I'll give you a mantra, you'll become God. This is as more serious than someone pretending to be a doctor and to give cures for diseases that they have no knowledge of. And so, Bhaktivinoda, at that time, the British, this one particular so-called incarnation of Vishnu, he had many followers. I've read thousands of followers, I've read hundreds of followers. He had many followers. Even men were bringing their daughters and their wives to engage in Mas Lila with him. They thought he was Vishnu. He had mystic powers. And there was, he had 2 assistants, and one of them was Shiva, and one of them was Brahma, who assisted him. And it's nonsense. So, but he was also saying that he had the power to kick the British out of India. And that's what the British were concerned about. They didn't care about the religious part of it, but they did care when he was saying, we're going to get rid of the British. I can do it. I will organize you. I have the power. I'm Vishnu. So they went to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur went there to visit him, he went with some others. And I think he actually specifically brought some Muslims with him, because most of the Hindus were afraid of him. And this so-called incarnation immediately recognized Bhaktivinoda. Because, oh, Kedarnath, I'm so glad to see you. You work with me and I will make you king of Orissa. And actually that Prabhupada also says in this lecture that area of where Jagannath Puri used to be called Utkala. Utkala is the name of Dhruva Maharaj's son. And that area is where Dhruva Maharaj used to rule from, that area where Jagannath Puri is. So, I will make you king. And he said, well, why are you here in this village? This is Bhaktivinoda speaking. Why are you in this village? Why don't you come with me to Jagannath Puri? Come see Lord Jagannath. Oh, Lord Jagannath, he's just made of wood. I am here. I am Vishnu. That's just a wooden idol. He was like fire, Bhaktivinoda. That was it for him. The British part, he just blasphemed Lord Jagannath. He immediately had him arrested and then taken to the prison in Jagannath Puri. And this man did have mystic powers, and the members of Bhaktivinoda's family became very, very ill. High fever. Bhaktivinoda himself, on the day of judgment, had a very high fever. His wife was begging him, please let him go. We're going to die. Don't, our daughter will die. Look at her, the fever. And he's going, I don't care if we all die. This man is blasphemous. He's claiming to be God. He is not God. He is not Vishnu. And he was very strong about it. He himself became very, very sick. And on the day of judgment, then he was being taken off to prison. And that's when they decided. Now there's interesting, some people say that Bhaktivinoda himself cut the hair off. And others say that no, when he went into the prison, the doctor cut his hair off. And apparently the mystic powers were coming from his hair. And he was fasting the whole time while he was on trial. And now when the hair was cut off, first of all, everybody that was sick and had fever became better. And he now was malnourished. So I've heard two versions of his death. One is that he took poison. Another is that he died of malnourishment because he'd been fasting. He had lost all his mystic powers. So Bhaktivinoda understood, and he wanted to defend, the Vaishnava philosophy and defend Lord Jagannath, that Lord Jagannath is the Lord of the universe. And Subhadra is his sister, and Lord Balaram is Ananta Sesha. They are not wooden idols. So Bhaktivinoda stood strongly against this bogus guru, incarnation. There's another story with Bhaktivinoda Thakur where people would go to this one tree in a village. And this tree was also inhabited by a powerful Brahmin Rakshasa, apparently. And they would go to the tree and give offerings and write notes to have, if they were on trial, to have the judgment against them changed so they would be found not guilty, or they would win the lawsuit and get the money. So Bhaktivinoda heard about this, and so he had, at this time, was very, had been studying Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, translating from Sanskrit to Bengali, and he even sent a copy. It was either Thoreau or Emerson, and that he was very grateful that but he wrote back to Bhaktivinoda saying, I don't read Sanskrit, but I know that this is a very important literature. And at one point there's a quote, somehow or other, he was able to get someone to translate for him. And he said, on my knees in the morning, I worship with reverence, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. He said something similar about the Bhagavad Gita. So, and Bhaktivinoda was also working very hard to have, books sent in 1896. He had the Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya sent to McGill University in Montreal, the same year that Prabhupada was born. And so he had a pure Vaishnava Brahmin recite the Srimad Bhagavatam under this tree for 1 month, or for however long it took him to read the entire Bhagavatam. This wasn't one of these sapta, what do you call them, discourses, 7 days discourses, where they mainly talk about the Ras Leela. This was the entire Bhagavatam, being chanted by a pure Vaishnava Brahmin. And at the end of it, the tree that had been there for hundreds of years just crashed. It just fell apart. And everyone was shocked. It just crumbled as if it was being hit by lightning. And this Brahmin Rakshasa was liberated and freed from that birth. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he started book distribution into the West, and he wrote at least 100 books on Vaishnavism, and he wrote many poems and many beautiful songs. There's one poem, if you don't mind, I'll just want to read a few verses from it. It happens to be one of my favorite of his poems. And, actually Mangalananda Prabhu, in his first album, he took some of the lyrics, some of these verses, and made a song. I don't remember, something about the thorn, the rose and the thorn or something. And then the Marathi band took some lyrics from this and with a melody and made it like a Christian gospel song. And I want to read the verses that were taken for that particular. It's a long poem, but it's in the mood if you think about it, and actually it fit perfectly to this melody that one of the devotees came up with, and it sounds just like a Christian gospel song. It was called "Stand, O Heroic Man." Alas for those who spend their days in festive mirth and joy, the dazzling, deadly liquid forms their hearts for air employ. I'm not reading all of the verses, just the ones that were the lyrics to that song. The shining boggles charm their eyes and draw their hearts' embrace. The slaves of wine can never rise from what we call disgrace. Was man intended to be a brute in work and heart? Should man, the Lord of all around, from common sense depart? Man's glory is in common sense, dictating us the grace that man is made to live and love the beauteous heaven's embrace. The flesh is not our own, alas, the mortal frame a chain. The soul confined for former wrongs should try to rise again. And then, my friends, no more enjoy nor weep for all below. The women, wine, and flesh of beasts, no love on these bestow. But thine to love thy brother man, and give thyself to God. And God doth know your wages fair. This fact is true and broad. Forget the past that sleeps, and ne'er the future dream at all. But act in times that are with thee, and progress ye shall call. And this was the chorus. So push on thy onward march, O soul, against an evil deed that stands with soldiers' hate and lust. A hero be indeed. Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. So, if anyone has some pastimes or things that I'd like to add, my very limited understanding of this great soul. Anyone have anything they'd like to say?
I have from my heart is my place of worship, in there it was saying how one evening Srila Bhaktivinoda was sitting peacefully in his house in Gojumati, Srilankan, looking towards Sri Mayapur over the clear waters of the Jalangi River. Pausing briefly from his devotional writings, he again saw a brilliant effulgence shining out in all directions from the holy land of Sri Mayapur. It was a vision of a wonderful golden city, a spiritual city, final fulfillment of the dreams of the Vaishnava Acharyas, from where the entire world would one day become inundated with love, pure love of God. So we got that.
Yeah. He had the vision of that temple that's there, and a city that would be there, the spiritual capital of the world. We're in a period where we're starting to see some of the. Look, I mean, Prabhupada told us. He said, "You see these cities. Soon, all these cities they'll all starve because they don't know how to grow their own food." We see that whether it's about to happen now, the total complete collapse, or we're just on one of the early stages of it, and they'll go on for another few more decades, or however it's going to transpire, I don't know. I don't have that spiritual vision, but we can see things decaying, falling. The things that the Acharyas have told us is coming to pass. And this movement and this process, we are so fortunate to be a part of it. Just in some small part that you just are able to wash the pots or sweep the floor or, talk to people. Something you can do to help. Prabhupada said, and I never actually heard Prabhupada say this, but I've heard several of my brothers say, the Prabhupada said that they will come to your farms in the hundreds, in the thousands. I believe it was Ramaswara who had a talk with Prabhupada one night on the train, late into the night, and he was talking about this. He talked, and then after he said this about the cities, soon they will all collapse and they'll starve. That was on March 1st or March 2nd in Atlanta. And then later that month, in Mayapur, on another morning walk, he said soon there may be some war, nuclear war. Well, but he also said Krishna can change his mind. But then he said other things about China as well. So things are in Kali Yuga not pleasant. It is this civilization, this Western civilization, that Prabhupada used us. When I say us, the Westerners, he used us to save his countrymen because they were trying to follow and imitate the West. And because the British had denigrated and humiliated and called, this whole, it's all just, you're aboriginal, this is all mythology, and whereas the Vaishnavas never said anything unkind about Jesus Christ. Quite the contrary. Muslim, Muhammad either, actually, the Vaishnavas never, but the followers is another issue. That's my point, what I said earlier. Prabhupada said someone should be, if you're going to be, like he used to say to a Christian all the time, so I'm following Jesus Christ. He said, that's very nice, you have a bona fide guru. Now you must follow his instructions. He says, I am. Okay. Do you eat meat? He says, yes. And well, Jesus Christ said, thou shalt not kill. And I heard in this lecture this morning, Prabhupada said, it's interesting, Jesus Christ, one of his, thanks for coming, my control. So anyway, it's time for Vishal, I'm sorry. But he said, he's what was I saying? Forgot.
Thou shalt not kill.
Thou shalt not kill. So then they try to kill him. Their guru. He's telling him, thou shalt not kill. And then they tried to kill him. And that's the nature of the Vaishnava. He's willing, just like Haridas Thakur. He kept preaching. He didn't stop preaching, and they beat him, and they beat him, and they beat him some more. And when he saw that the people beating him were getting tired, and that their lives were threatened because the king would be, or the magistrate would be angry with them, he went into samadhi. They throw him into the ocean, thinking his body's dead. And then a little while later, he comes out of trance and swims to the shore and starts chanting Hare Krishna again. Haridas Thakur ki jai. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Prabhu, just a question. You said something startling. You said, even in these days, much less in the days of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we're seeing elements, which I think is what you said, of Sahajism approaching or confronting ISKCON. Could you just give a real quick example of what you're talking about?
No.
What?
I don't want to speak about it.
No, I mean...
Yeah, I'm in front of the deities. I don't
Right.
want to commit any Vaishnava aparat.
Okay.
No, I don't know. But it's there, people, it's there, it's around, and we just have to be on guard.
Okay.
I'm not in a position to judge anyone.
All right.
But we should be learn it in our Siddhanta. And if we hear something that goes against, I don't mean to be rude to you, Prabhu. I don't mean to be rude and say, no to your answer.
No, I understand.
But we should understand and know and be vigilant against any signs of it creeping in.
I don't know this is wrong.
Yes.
There's an example, my memory isn't that great, but the devotees, they were doing this thing of having dressed as Radha and having dressed as Krishna. And then when Prabhupada heard about it, he got very, very upset.
Oh, yeah.
And that he was,
Yeah.
explaining how this is not a proper thing to do. Because even when they tried to give garland to him, he took it and put it on but then he would say, oh, you want to know more about Krishna? So he started talking about the Govinda part.
That's why he wrote the Krishna book.
Yes.
Yes, Kanchan?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, you said that during the first time there was no version, I couldn't find Spanish and everything.
That's my understanding.
But I don't understand how it's possible there were like all these followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like Narottam, they were all...
Yeah, but it was already like another 150 years later. I don't know sure exactly. Yeah, right now, like Yogananda Prabhu just asked me a question. There's certain Prabhupada books, like I had, there was at one point we were selling the Krishna book in a box set and it was three volumes. And I had a really first-class copy of it, and I was over-enthusiastic one day, these people that came, and I gave it to them, not realizing that, first of all, they weren't really serious, and then I would never see it again. And I think about it almost every morning. And he was asking, do you know anybody who has it? I said, I know someone who had it. But sometimes these books, they, after some time, and if there really is a collapse of civilization as we know it, like this year, we didn't have, for the first time I know of, we didn't have a Vyas Puja book printed because of the pandemic. So the books being printed, I don't know what's happening with the BBT, how people are paying the BBT, how it's going on. I know we have warehouses of books, and we all have our own volumes of books. But as a matter of fact, this morning at one point I was having trouble, and I wanted to hear this lecture by Prabhupada. And his point was that he was making a strong point You don't have to be a sannyasi to be a guru. And then two of the original 11, they were grahastas. So anybody can, who knows this philosophy can be, and who's following the principles, they at least can be shiksha gurus. So, what was I talking about? I'm sorry.
About BBT and all that.
The BBT, yeah.
About the books, about the
Bullhorn season.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was very important. Yes?
Prabhu, today we're also having a Shraddha ceremony along with the recognition of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's most blessed appearance. And is it okay if my wife just makes an announcement real quick about the Shraddha?
Sure.
We've by Krishna's mercy, we came together as a family and made very nice preparations for the devotees. And we're begging your blessings and your mercy for her departed father and auntie. Shamalota?
So I just wanted to tell you that Yogendra did speak about this earlier. So we'd like to hear what you have to say.
I'm pretty sure everybody has better expectations for this year, and it has been such a strange year for everybody. And right now, the whole humanity is suffering. Thousands and thousands of people are dying by an invisible enemy, so small that we need technology to see it, and it's killing thousands and thousands of people. Fortunately, in a sense, my father did not die by COVID-19, but for other health issues. But it was a sudden death. He just had a very simple eye procedure the day before at the doctor's office. And my sister insists to put a nurse to take care of him that night. So it was a shock for everybody when the next morning I received a call from South America telling me that my father is gone. We as devotees are being so fortunately to know about this difference between the soul and the body. We try to practice and we try to understand the philosophy. But when it's somebody who was so close and so dear to you, it became very difficult. The emotions are overwhelming. Even when you try to use intelligence and logic, it became very difficult. And I was for a couple of days practically in denial. I even went to work like nothing happened. And everybody was telling me, you need to mourn your father. You need to cry. You need to do it. And I thought, no, it's fine. It's just the body. But I was fortunate enough to be encouraged by my family, especially my husband, to be able to feel the pain. And after feeling the pain, I got to the point where I realized that even if my sister and I do or have done some insignificant service for the last 37 years in ISKCON, if not for the pious activities that his daughters did, but because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, my father, who probably never completely understood Krishna consciousness, he was one of the people who, when I went to Ecuador, he will just be the first one at the table to enjoy prasada. He will eat prasada like it was the last thing he wants to do in his life. And his life was very difficult. His childhood was very, very hard. And my father was what we call here a workaholic. His shop was open until the day the country closed for COVID-19. He was 85 years old and he was still taking the public bus to open his shop because he felt he needed to work. He needed to be busy. And that is why we, the three kids, the three siblings, we learned from him that dedication to hard and honest work. And like I said, just because of the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, my sister and I, we are so fortunate that we were able to help him in this transition. My sister put Ganga water in his mouth. We saved some of the ashes, and they will be taken to Mother Ganga next year. And we sponsored a prasadam distribution in Ecuador in his behalf. So every single activity we do in this life has a consequence. So today I try to do the best with my family to make a nice prasadam for the pleasure of Sisi Gornitai and Sisi Radhakanta, so he can enjoy the last meal before he goes hopefully to a better life. Thank you very much.
The Prabhupada said that, it's not that we don't miss the person. We know that they're not that body, that they're the spirit soul. But it's not like you don't miss them. That's a genuine emotion. To feel that emotion. To lament that, they're dead. They're not dead. And obviously, according to what Prabhupada said, he had 2 daughters who became devotees, very devoted to Prabhupada's and Lord Chaitanya's movement. So he obviously was a very pious man. A good fruit doesn't come from a bad tree. So your father, you have, you are the proof that he was a pious man.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
So is it time for prasadam? Anything? Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Bhakti Vinod ki jai. Oh, but something, did Yogendra announce about Gopal?
No, I didn't announce it.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, you can.
Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he had a very high fever for several weeks, and apparently he has COVID-19. And he's older than I am, and he's also had heart surgery already. The very first time I went to a temple was his wedding. And I also saw later, when I finally did decide, 2 years later, I moved into the Brooklyn temple, and he lived outside the temple, and he was working in Connecticut. But every morning before going to work, he'd come to the Mangalarti, and every night before going home, he'd come for Sundararti and pay obeisances to Prabhupada with great emotion. He was his example as Grahastha is first class. I hope he survives this particular, but he was a very, very, very good example as a Grahastha. Gopal Krishna ki jai.
I wanted to make one more announcement. I announced it in the morning, and several of the devotees were here. I think it's appropriate because we don't remember so much yearly. Individuals might, but not as a community or temple. But back in 1992, there was a hurricane that hit the Lafayette area, Lake Charles area, just where this one hit. And there were a couple of devotees at our New Orleans temple, Dana Vianita and Uttam Bhakta. And so Uttam Seva. Uttam Seva he was a pilot for a small plane. So they, and Dana Vianita, he would cook for food distribution to the public. So he cooked, and they rode a car to Picayune, Mississippi, and rented a small plane and brought prasadam to Lafayette, distributed the prasad, and then flew home. But unfortunately, about a mile from the airport, the plane went down into the swampy area there, and they both deceased, passed on. Uttam Seva and Danadenita Prabhu's Tijan.
I didn't mean to ask you about that. There was a person called
Good to see you. I should see you guys in English.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it today.
Uttam Seva was from Uttam Seva was from Hawaii, was initiated by John.
And I didn't remember going to
My sons know that.
because he was very emotional and when he finished he wanted to say, I just wanted to tell everybody that it has been a pleasure to live and to serve the community. I want to tell everybody that I have enjoyed being part of this temple. It was like he was saying a goodbye. He said a goodbye that morning. And they invited my his husband to go with them. And he asked me, should I go? And I said, no, don't go. And then they said they found they were holding each other when they found the bodies. They were holding each other.
You take your two plates down. You can take it later if you like. We'll just learn about those right now. I'm going to take the other one later.
I remember this story. I remember.
Is it Mike?
I remember when he was here. But I know that also that English has been very, very serious. For a long time. I don't know, before we were going to
That was Darren,
that was
his friend.
his friend. But then he has also
It's a trailer with four doors on the side. It's separate.
It's got a cage, put a cage.
Yeah, it's apartments in this town.
Yeah, down in Washington.
We have a warehouse. And forklift, and I have
I'll get the 7 clothes
They
later.
go up every morning. They take a look behind the and forward and head out on a thousand feet. Every day, they go on cover and like. All small people. So I go all the way to the start. It's expensive Cobra. It's a trailer. They're gonna downsize it to a truck, not a semi. It's a lot of Peterbilt. Yeah. Yeah, like a beer truck or something.
But physically lifted up.
So, I don't know if it's a lot of work, and it's so hot.
That's why.
I've changed my clothes like 3 times a day.
Yeah.
But I put a roof on the house, and then that prepped me so hot, being hot all day. Yeah, I did it myself. I wrote 31 squares, And then after I did that, I got this job, so I'm going to go the transitional thing. Yeah, almost 60. But I'm looking at the transition. I'd like to start my own business. I have some ideas for manufacturing. Rather than put it out there until I just do it. Just got to do it.
If it's in your heart, the Krishna knows.
She was saying
Got everything crossed.
Might not, but we can only try, right?
Guys already doing it. She kept us flying around the house. All that stuff.
in